Good morning. How's everybody today? This is a fakey mic. I already figured that out. It's there to trick you. Like I said, my name is Ray Queen. I've been in camping for quite a long time. I love my ministry. I get to go and do a tremendous amount of things. How many of you ever been to Camp Blue Ridge? A few of you? Camp Blue Ridge, or been to one of our camps? Okay. You know, we have 56 camps across North America and Canada. Our church is a very dynamic church that has a tremendous amount of ministries, and it is amazing to be part of one of those in such a unique environment. Those of you who have ever been to Camp Blue Ridge, you ever been afraid, like when you go up to the mountains? You go out to the mountain and up into the woods, and it's a little different. It's not quite like this. So there's some fear. Well, I want to share with you, I have those fears too. But I'm not afraid of the mountains. I'm more afraid to come here. It's strange, isn't it? Because I feel so comfortable and at home up in the woods. And I'm not afraid of the animals. I'm more afraid of the people. So it's interesting. I was called to Camp Blue Ridge. I come from Florida Conference, born and raised there. And I've been at Camp Blue Ridge just about 5 years now. And it's been a blessing. Camp Blue Ridge has grown and come into a season of camping that we're really starting to focus a lot more on family ministry as opposed to just traditional summer camp ministry. And that family ministry has really started to take us into a place where we're helping families continue to grow in an environment that is so hostile to families today. Families are just wrecked in today's world. And so being able to do something a little bit different with our ministry and focus on families. We're starting to convert some of our cabins over to more family style. We're converting the camp over into a place that just makes it more inviting for you. We got internet this year. Crazy. So it's kind of cool. We feel like we're starting to catch up with the world. Which is scary. In our little community up there, just to share a little bit about what we do for you as our constituents, but our little community up there in Montebello, we have 180-ish registered voters in our community. That's my community that I live in, and we have just over 100 people that actually reside there in our little town. So our town's about that big. And it's super cool because the people that live up there, a portion of them have faith background, but the majority of them either choose not to have a faith background or just have never been exposed to a faith background. And so our ministry up there has also not only has taken where we're trying to minister to our church folk, but we're also trying to be a light in our community, a positive light in our community, where we're able to share love and God with our community in a unique way. We're connected to our local fire department there. That's kind of our everything, our little fire department, and it's been neat. I sit on the board of directors there now, and They've always done everything. If you know anything about like volunteer fire departments, they always do things on Saturday, right? And it's neat. Well, since we've been up there and started to do things for our community, they have made a change to start doing all of their events on Sundays so that we can attend. And it's pretty neat to be able to have that little bit of outreach. And never was asked to. They just started choosing to do those things. So it's nice to be able to share our ministry, sometimes with our words like we're doing today, and sometimes just with our actions. So it's a blessing to be here this morning. Like I said, I'm born and raised in South Florida. It's where I come from. I also lived in Germany for 4 years. which was absolutely crazy for me. So when I drove up and saw this little church here, it reminded me so much of the town Schweinfurt, Germany, that I was stationed at when I was in the Army, because it was a stone church like this that sat in our community. You're missing the bombshell that's sticking out the side of it, though. That was unique there. But it was just beautiful. I used to love go and visit that church. It wasn't an Adventist church, but I loved going there just because it was beautiful with all the stained glass and just absolutely stunning. So love your church. It is a light in the community. I'm sure that other people drive by and just... This morning, our service, my sermon is entitled, Don't Look Back. And we read a familiar verse this morning about Lot and his wife when they were called out of Sodom and she turned around and looked back. As I was researching and studying this and praying about this, I learned a tremendous amount, because as we're taught as young people, we're taught that what she did was wrong. And she was condemned for that wrongdoing. And so today, I do believe that what she did was wrong, but I'm not sure her heart was necessarily in the wrong place. So as we go through today's sermon, we're going to look at a lot of things that may give you a little different view as to where Lot's wife truly was. You know, the Bible doesn't really talk a lot about women. But women are very important in the Bible. And women really have this beautiful, safe place for us. And talking this morning, where we're in the Sabbath school lesson, that the safety and security is under God's wings. And I think of that mother hen, you know, and it's that mother that we run to when we're scared, you know. And so it's just a safe place when mom is around. So Genesis 19:25 and 26 says, do not fear. And this is a direct command from God. It says, do not fear, because I am with you. And the difference here is he is saying that I am with you, but are you with me? You see the little bit of a difference there? Because God never leaves us. I was taught as a young person, if I went to a movie theater, that my angel would be where? Where? Outside, right? Okay. If I went to a bowling alley or anything like that, where is your angel going to be? Is that true? No. Because my Bible tells me he will never leave me or forsake me. It doesn't matter where I go or what I do, he will never, ever leave me or forsake me. God bless our parents. They tried. When God tells us not to be afraid because he is with us, the only reason we have to be afraid is because we're not with him. Fear creeps up on us so many different ways. You know, like I shared with you, you may come up to the mountains and it's different. And you have that fear because you're in a different place. And when I come to the city, I get those fears because it's a different place for me. It doesn't mean that God's not with me, but I'm just cautious. And you're cautious because you don't know if there's a bear lurking outside your cabin. And I'm comfortable around the bear. And you're comfortable around the people. See, there's so many things in this world that we become accustomed to because of fear that we actually put ourselves in fear's place normally. There's so many times where we'll sit down with a bowl of popcorn and our girlfriend or our wife or a friend and sit down and watch a movie that we know is going to scare us, right? And it's entertainment to be scared. Sometimes we'll go to, I don't go to them anymore, but like the haunted house at Halloween time or so. And there's those places that we intentionally put ourselves to put fear into our lives when really all we have to do is stay near Jesus. And those fears don't come. In Mark 34, give you a second to turn there if you like, or excuse me, Mark 4, verse 35 to 41. Jesus talks about another fear here, and I'll give you a minute to get there. This microphone is like, I got to talk into it, and it's not real. So Mark 4, verse 35 through 41. This is the time where Jesus calms the storm. And this is another time where fear is instilled into not just people, but the disciples. The people who walked with God hand in hand had fear amongst them. So is it fair that we have fears? This is where you shake your head. It is fair. So verse 35 says, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, hey, let's go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind them, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them, so they weren't alone. And a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. They almost sank. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion, just relaxing, enjoying, just having a nice rest after all that work that he had just done. The disciples woke him. They shook him and woke him. Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Don't you even care? He got up and rebuked the wind and said to the waves, quiet, be still. And the wind listened. And the waves listened. He said to his disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? I remember a story like this. See, growing up in South Florida, I grew up in a small fishing town, and I loved fishing. And me and my buddy, we would grow up as even young people. We had a boat, and we would go fishing all the time. And you know, the Bahamas was not that far away from where I grew up there in Florida. And there were times that him and I, 13, 14 years old, would hop in our boat and go across and fish the Bahamas. Never told our parents. No idea where we were. We were just out fishing. Just decided to go fish over in the Bahamas. Anyone from the Bahamas? Been there. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. Well, we went over this day, and we got in the boat, and we started heading over to the Bahamas, and it was just a beautiful day, nice and flat and crisp, and heading right into the sunrise. And we drive across, and we get over there, and we fish all day, and it's absolutely gorgeous. We catch a lot of fish, and it starts to get later in the day, and it's time to go home. So we pull up into Grand Bahama there as children, tie up our little boat, little 18-foot boat with a single engine. You're not supposed to cross the water unless you have at least 2 engines in case something goes wrong, right? We're kids. We didn't think about that. So we tied up our boat, and we get some gas, get everything to go back, buy a couple of sodas, bag of chips, and we hop back in the boat, open the cooler, and there's all the fish, and we're so proud and excited, and we turn and we start to head out, and the sky is black. The sky is just black, and we could see lightning in the background there. And we have to head across that. And we've been on the ocean enough. We know what to do. And we didn't have all those fancy electronic stuff that says, just here's the thing. You just push the button and it takes you there. We didn't have all that. We had a little compass that flopped around on the boat. And if you've seen one of those, that's what we had. So we get in the boat and we're driving, and I'm like, Bubba, it doesn't look too. That was his name. It still is his name. And we're headed across, and the seas really start picking up. And they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the rain starts to come, and the wind really starts to howl. And we're in like a 17, 18-foot boat. It wasn't very big. And I promise to you, those waves and swells from the top of the crest of the wave down into the bottom of the belly of the wave was probably 20 plus feet. That's a long way for a small boat like that. And if you don't keep going, you will flip over. You will. You have to keep going in times like that. And we're standing there, we're white knuckles, you're holding on so tight, trying to drive the boat, and we're going, and we go across, and it's like, oh, Lord, help us, because we're in a bad spot. But we have to keep going. We can't turn around and go back. Because, you see, there in Bahamas, unless you live there, you can't just stay there without rights to do so. We could get on and get gas, but we had to go home. And our parents didn't know where we were. They'd be worried to death. Normally, it's about an hour and a half drive to come across. Well, we weren't even quite halfway back. And we're about 3 hours into this trip and just driving the boat and going up the waves and then coming down. Going up the waves. You can't even see. And we were scared. We were so scared. And we would stop and pray, but you can't stop. You just got to pray as you're going. It's like, Lord, just get us out of this. Get us out of this. Calm the waves, right? Calm the waves. Stop the rain. It's blinding us. We didn't have a top on the boat. It was just us. But the rain never stopped. And the wind didn't stop. And the waves didn't stop. It took us 7 hours to get home. Well after dark, and all we had was our little compass. But we knew how to go. We knew what to do. Just had to do it. See, fear comes to us sometimes intentionally. And two little boys in a boat didn't necessarily set out to go do something dumb, but we probably should have told somebody we were going, right? Probably should have communicated with somebody, but, back then, you didn't necessarily do that, right? You just go play with your friends, you go do stuff, and that's what we were used to. But we had put ourselves in a dangerous situation, a very dangerous situation. And we prayed. And it was confusing to us because it's like, man, the Bible said he just got up and spoke and everything went quiet and we could go. But sometimes God's got to teach us a lesson. There's fears these days that we have that all of us have just lived through. Anybody ever heard of COVID? Mm-hmm. Has your church been affected by COVID? Mm-hmm. Has your life been affected by COVID? Were you afraid? Were there fears in your life? It was interesting because when COVID hit, we really didn't understand it. We didn't understand what was going on. We didn't understand all those things, and that Christmas was just a normal Christmas day. Right before all that happened, it was just a normal Christmas day. We're sitting there with our families, the tree blinking, the lights underneath there, Christmas presents, all the food, the family, all those things. It was just normal. We were living normal lives. You came to church and you sat in the same pew you're sitting in today. Pathfinders was rolling, our schools were going, things were fine, and here comes COVID. Just punched us right in the throat. Everybody got Everybody got afraid. Is it okay? Sure, it's fair. It's crazy stuff in this world, and it's not things that God like says, hey, let me do this. Sin. Just coming at us. You know, it's not the first pandemic, because back in 1875, the Fiji measles came. And 1/3 of Fiji's population was destroyed because of it. 1/3. It's a lot of people. The Russian flu, 360,000 people died in a year from the Russian flu. HIV and AIDS, I remember back in the early 80s when that really popped up. Oh my goodness, that was scary because you were afraid to touch anybody. There was no cure. It's crazy. This past October, the World Health Organization and the U.S. Government Accountability Office announced that they believe a new pandemic is coming. And so they're preparing a new antiviral drug ready to combat something that they can't even identify yet. Lord help us. One thing all of these world events has in common is fear. Sometimes we do it to ourselves. Sometimes it just happens. In the end, it's fair. God knows it's fair. And where is He? Where is He? He's right in the back of our boat. Sleeping easy. Laid His head on the pillow. And how can He do that? Because He's connected with His Father. And He knows where His assurance lies. And if we know where our assurance lies, we can go to sleep in the back of the boat. Now, somebody still has to drive. Somebody's got to still push into the waves. But we can rest assured. Because we know, even if this takes me, I know where I'm at. I want to read to you a section out of the Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 14. I love Sister White because she has such a dynamic view on so many things. And she goes into this story about the destruction of Sodom. You see, Sodom was a sinful place, right? Do we live in a sinful place? Oh, yes. Do you think that our sinful place is that much different than Sodom? Probably not. It's probably worse. You're right. This world's gotten crazy. But she says, it reads like this in Patriarchs and Prophets. It says, fairest among the cities of the Jordan Valley was Sodom, set in a plain which was as the garden of the Lord. In its fertility and beauty, here the luxuriant vegetation of the tropics flourished. Here was the home of the palm tree, the olive tree, the vine, and the flowers shed their fragrance throughout the year. Sounds beautiful. Rich harvests clothed the fields. Flocks and herds covered the encircling mountains. Art and commerce contributed to enrich the proud city of the plain. The treasures of the east adorned her places, and the caravans of the desert brought their stories of precious things to supply her markets of trade. With little thought or labor, every want in life could be supplied. And the whole year seemed to be one round of festivals. It sounds very familiar to a lot of places that we live today. Every need is right outside your door. The beautiful landscapes that we can find Every tree, anything we want is right there. And this is what Lot and his family grew up in. It's what they knew. It was their normal. They had nothing to fear. Everything was supplied. It was just absolutely beautiful place. I would almost like to live there. She continues on and says, Behold, says the prophet, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom, pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. There is nothing more desired among men than riches and leisure, and yet these gave birth to the sins that brought destruction upon the cities of the plain. Lot returned sorrowfully once he heard the news from the angels to his home and told the story of his failure. Then the angels bade him, arise and take your wife and the 2 daughters who were still at home in your house and leave this city. But Lot delayed. Though daily distressed at beholding deeds of violence, he had no true conceptions of the debasing and abominable iniquity practiced in that vile city. He did not realize the terrible necessity for God's judgment to put a check on sin. See, God had a plan, and he told him to be part of it. And he delayed. Some of his children clung to Sodom, and his wife refused to depart without them. The thought of leaving those whom he held dearest on earth seemed more than he could bear, Sister White says. It was hard to forsake his luxurious home and all the wealth acquired by the labors of his whole life, to go forth and be a destituted wanderer. What's different with him and us? We work our whole lives to build our homes, to make a good place for our families to reside, make it comfortable and safe for them. And then God says, he sends an angel to you and says, pack up and leave. Leave right now. What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? Because he's calling you and telling you to move to Camp Blue Ridge, where it's scary and there's bears. He's calling you out of the city and says, go. Is it fair that he questioned that? Is it fair that he pondered for a little bit and said, hold up, God, let's talk about this? It's fair, right? The heavenly messengers took him and his wife and daughters by the hand. They had to take him by the hand and escort him out of the school like a child. And we know the rest of the story, right? Because heading out of the city, what'd she do? She turned around and looked back. Why did she do that? Her children were there. Her home was there. Their jobs were there. All the people that they tried to minister to were there. Their cows were there. Their sheep were there. Their car was there. Everything was there. Is it fair that she turned around to look back? It's fair. It's fair. pillar of salt. She disobeyed. It was fair. But God said, leave and go, because I have something better for you. This place is not for you. And if our heart resides back there, we ought not leave. You see, it's really interesting because throughout COVID, I said so many times, I just want to get back to normal. And what were they leaving? They were leaving their normal. They were leaving what was just absolutely normal to them and called out to be desolate and go into the unknown. And all I can think of is so many times, I just want to get back to normal. I just want our churches to get back to normal. I want to come back and sit in my pew. I don't want to watch this stuff on TV. Where are the rest of the people that's sitting beside you? Are they still scared? Or did it just become a new normal? Our world has changed, and all we want to do is get back to normal. We're no different than Lot and his wife. 2 years later, we're starting to get to a new normal. And see, what's sad is during COVID and all the times that we were forced to do something different, so much ministry happened. We were so stuck in our ruts that God had to do something different. And all we wanted to do was go back. See, it's a little different way to think about things. If God is calling us out of Sodom, why do I want to go back? Why do I want to go back to what's normal? Because if the ministry that was happening then wasn't working, and he says you have to do something different, why do I want to go back? Why do we want to get back to doing this if God says do that? It's messed up. It's all because we want to be normal. We want to be safe. We want to be secure. And unfortunately, folk, we put that safety and security on what we build and not so much on what God builds. And what am I going to do when God calls me home and says, Ray, it is time. You are coming home. Am I going to get to those gates and turn around and look back? Say, it's different up here. Where's my heart? See, Lot's wife wasn't a bad woman. Her kids were there. She left her kids there. She wasn't bad. She just had her eyes focused on the wrong thing. Because, folk, I'm going to tell you what. We're going to have to leave family here. We're going to have to leave the things that we built our whole lives to go see our Lord. And are we going to turn around and look back? Is the safety of home worth it? It's just a different way to look at things because God is trying to teach us so much. And are we ready to go? Are we so ready to go that we don't want this anymore? Because if we want this, we can't want that. We pick up the story again in Patriarchs and Prophets. Again, the solemn command was given to Lot to hasten, for a fiery storm would be delayed, but a little longer. But one of them ventured to cast a look back in the doomed city, and she became a monument of God's judgment. Life's wife became a pillar of salt. If Lot himself had manifested no hesitancy to obey God's angel's warning and had earnestly fled towards the mountain, without one word of pleading or remittance, his wife also would have made her escape. You see, his hesitancy caused her hesitancy. It's true. He stopped to question God, and so did she. She fed off of her husband's confidence. She continues and says, the influence of his example would have saved her from the sin that sealed her doom. So when our hesitancy, who else are we affecting? All of the people that we're committed to in our communities. The people that we're trying to draw into our church, and we finally get them here. And then our hesitancy drives them out. We work so hard to share Jesus with people, and then they look at us and see our hesitancy, and they're out. What have we done? So we find ourselves in an interesting place. Similar to Lot's wife, similar to Lot. The little Bible story that we were told as children now has a whole different meaning. Because what am I going to do when God calls? Where's my fear? Am I just like Jesus and laying in the back of the boat with my head on a pillow because I know I'm good? Or am I trying to force that boat through the waves and do it on my own? See, if you do one, automatically we say, if I don't drive the boat, I'm going to die. Well, if Jesus says, if you die doing what I tell you to do, so be it. If he calls you out to do something different and you die doing it, so what? This ain't home. It's not what we're here for. Why do we want to continue looking back? I ask myself that all the time. One of my sayings I have to myself, all of my staff know it without a shadow of a doubt. I only want to be in God's light. I only want to be in his light. And sometimes his light moves, right? And it says, come over here. And where am I? I get to the edges of that light. Now, God is moving and I'm not. But I know when I'm to the outside edges of that light because it starts to get dim. And where do I need to find myself? Back in the center of his light. And if God is moving and saying go, I need to go with him. But sometimes God is staying perfectly still. And I drift off to the edge of that light. Has God left me? But I know when it's starting to get dim. So why do we want to go back to what's normal? People, if you're not doing something different, we're wrong. Because God truly is going to continue to call us away from what is normal, because what is normal here is sin. And if we're going to live a life without sin, we have to get away from what's normal, and we can't look back. We have to go forward. In closing, Psalms 46 of the New Living Translation says this: God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble to the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble as the waters surge. A river brings joy to the city of our God, that sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos, and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders, and the earth melts. Verse 7 says, the Lord of heaven's armies are here amongst us. The God of Israel is my fortress. Come see the glorious works of our Lord. See how he brings destruction upon the world. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shield with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here with us today. The God of Israel is your fortress.